Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third session of the km4dev 20 years anniversary. This is Cesar from Zurich, and before we start with content, I want to give you some technical recommendations. Please note that there is a chat on the right side of your screen. If there is no chat, then you need to enable it in the lower bar of your Zoom call. There is an icon of chat next to the microphone and all those options, so you can start seeing the chat on the right side. If you have any troubles listening or hearing or seeing the presentation, the best is that you close this call and you rejoin from the link that was sent to your email. I also want to let you know that this meeting is being recorded in the spirit of knowledge sharing, so the video will be shared with the members of the community after today. For the moment, all your microphones are off, but you will be invited to open those during the breakout sessions to talk. And one more thing, this session will consist in breakout rooms. Please answer the poll that we are going to post in the chat now. There is a link to let us know in which groups you would like to participate. You have a group for users, facilitators, and sponsors. So your selections will help us assign you to the right group. Now I hand over to Ginetta.
Thank you, Cesar, and welcome everybody. My name is Ginetta, and I'm the facilitator of this session, which is part of a set of sessions for our km4dev 20 anniversary celebration. And each session provides a relay message. Please go on the other slide, Cesar. The relay message is a piece of advice and a food for thought from the previous session. We will do ours at the end of this session. And the piece of advice for us is coming from a specific session based on Africa, and is km4dev's impact will be more global if it diversifies. Now we have this, we can have a look at our agenda. Please go to the next slide, please. And while you take a look at it, let me present briefly our topic leaders. David has been a member of km4dev since 2008. He has designed our km4dev wiki. He has worked as an innovation and knowledge management specialist in several UN agencies around the globe. And last year, he joined the WorldBank group, where he leads communities Reinvented. Ray joined the WorldBank in 2014. He has extensive instructional design expertise and over 10 years community management experience in the private and public sectors. He is the main writer of the Community Management Primer, the foundation document for the community's Reinvented learning curriculum. And then with Bruce. Bruce brought community and KM expertise to the WorldBank group from his years of managing a 1,000 member directors and chairs of volunteers community of practice at the American Red Cross. Bruce has led the cultivation and development of the WorldBank group's network of over 115 external-facing COPs since 2012. And now David, Ray, and Bruce will tell us the story of Communities Reinvented, a center of excellence within the WorldBank, whose mission is to enable teams, units, and departments to create and sustain communities of practice in a way that fosters learning, cooperation, collaboration, and innovation across the entire institution and beyond to drive real development impact. Now, we can ready to start with the presentation. If you have any question, just place the question on the chat. We will try to answer it in the Q&A session as much as possible. And now, Ray, the stage is all yours.
Need to unmute, Ray?
Yes.
Only the 1,000th time I've done that in a Zoom session. So thank you, Netta, and thank you everybody for attending this session. Next slide. So to set a little context around us, we're a small team of 5. Davide is our team lead, and Bruce, who you'll be hearing from next, with Claudia and Zarko, who unfortunately could not be here today. A small team of 5 in an organization of over 16,000 staff. And with such a small team, you really need to exert leverage, and we'll go into that a little later. The team has extensive community management expertise and a wide range of complementary skills. which we think are important, including knowledge management, marketing, communications, knowledge exchange, facilitation, and instructional design. And to link back to the relay message of the previous session regarding diversification, although we only have 1 woman and 4 men, the 5 of us are actually from 5 different countries. Next slide. But for those of you who are not familiar with the World Bank, it has a global reach involving 189 member countries with an annual budget of around $70 billion. Its mission is very clear: eradicate extreme poverty and promote shared prosperity. However, the World Bank is known not only as a development funding organization, but as a knowledge organization. And with so many countries, ministries, finance, education, health and environment, and other government departments, NGOs and foundations, maintaining effective knowledge flows across the globe is a formidable challenge. And I know that many of you, especially those who are working in large international organizations, will be very familiar with this issue. We believe that communities of practice are an effective solution to facilitating these knowledge flows and to ensure that there are two-way knowledge flows between the World Bank Group, external colleagues, clients, and partners. Next slide. We have currently over 350 communities of practice on various platforms, mostly online, but also in person within the World Bank Group. Over 1/3 of these companies are externally facing, and the remaining 2/3 are internally facing. And for transparency, not all are active and not all are successful. Building and sustaining communities of practice is not easy. It takes time, effort, support, and the right approach. Communities of practice are catalysts for closing this knowledge and these knowledge and collaboration gaps throughout the World Bank Group, as well as promoting and supporting collaboration with and amongst our external stakeholders. So we have developed and continue to develop and expand a center of excellence for communities of practice and collaboration in the World Bank Group, which provides tailored and targeted tools, training, documentation, technical assistance, and business support to the existing 350 plus communities of practice, as well as developing and training future community managers and leaders and developing an even greater expansion of the community of practice network, both inside and outside the World Bank Group. So we've come from very humble beginnings to where we are now. So let me hand you over to Bruce, who will show you how we got here, and then Davida, who will describe where we're heading next. So over to you, Bruce.
Next slide, please. So in April of 2012, this is how it looked. The World Bank had about 50 communities of practice. They used a variety of names. Some were thematic groups that sort of had a lot of baggage. They had been tried over 5 years and didn't work very well. So we had 50 randomly organized COPs, randomly successful, no central support, no real training. There was pockets of training. We called them a variety of different things. And often success to the people above, the leaders or authorizers of communities of practice, was that they had a platform and that they had invited members. That was sort of how they measured success. In April of 2012, I and another external consultant came to the World Bank to work with their knowledge team to work on a 3-month community practice strengthening program, also to test 8 design principles. The idea was to make good COPs that were recommended by directors of the World Bank to make them better. What we found was most of them needed to reach harder. They really appreciated the 4 levels of training we offered. We found they were hungry for training, hungry for advisory services. At the end of that 3 months, we recommended that all of them needed a dedicated, even if it's a part-time community manager, and there needs to be backups. Often we had consultants on short contracts that would work really well on a COP, and then they would take the summer off because they were out of days. And so there'd be big gaps. They needed a COP toolkit. There was a variety of guidance. Somehow that needed to be codified. We needed governance, and we added that to our new external platform, which we launched in July of 2012, which is now called, and was called then, Collaboration for Development. We started to build a roundtable as we launched that, so that people who were creating these new external facing COPs could learn from each other. We started collating together the guidance, and we purposely started calling all of this effort COPs so people weren't confused what we were working on. Next slide, please. So as we move forward, we realized there was demand. There was a lot of demand for our internal collaboration space. There was a lot of demand for our advisory services. There was demand for training. There was demand for opportunities to talk and learn from each other. And so we started building from this demand. We started offering training. We started to professionalize community managers. We shifted from having a community manager to having a community manager who was trained. We started working on community management training. The information in that, what we learned over the previous couple of years, we codified into our community building primer that Ray worked on. We started building networks of communities, community managers. So building on what I had done on the roundtable for the external facing ones, we similarly started a World Bank Group Community Managers Network. What we found is it takes an ensemble to support a couple hundred COPs. I was focused on the external facing ones. We all were focused on the training. There were others focused on the internal facing ones. And we were just starting to see the emergence of KM as a specific personnel stream at the bank. Next slide, please. But again, we needed a authorizing environment. We needed to have, we found as we did the training, it worked well. We certified people to become community managers. We decided we needed a pipeline. So each cohort for the training, we would mostly have World Bank staff, but we'd also include 5 or so external colleagues that we had thought had potential to be able to be hired by World Bank teams for the 50 to 75 new COPs that we're starting each year. We decided to try to test solutions for a team. So we start taking a team approach to things and created a COP lab where we would have cohorts of intact teams that we would work with. So we still had the individual training for community manager. We were experimenting and coming up with new tools that these teams, we'd review them in our classes, but there were tools and tactics that they could take and do with their teams back in their own offices. And we updated the community building primer. Next slide. But we realized we still needed work on the authorizing environment. And so, I'm sorry, the next slide after this one, please. Yeah, we realized we still needed more in the authorizing environment. We needed more recognition for the work of COPs, for the work of the teams, for the work of the community managers and the other core team members who were participating. We'd been doing Community Managers Appreciation Day recognition for several years. So we decided to launch Stories of Impact and had maybe 40 to 50 teams who had been around for a while who actually wrote up and submitted really great stories of impact. The brilliant thing is these were reviewed by higher level senior leaders, managers, and directors who said, wow, it's amazing what all these communities of practice have accomplished. we really need to do more to support these. And this is very valuable. We started having some of our larger global practices, which are large macro business units of sort of different parts and sections of our international development focus. One global practice launched COPs for its entire global practice. So they had between 20 and 40 COPs. And we recognize that leader for his innovation and advocacy. We gave out other awards to individuals or teams for things they're doing. So we started getting more and more recognition. Meanwhile, we continued to iterate our COP lab, and we started to get, besides just bringing external individuals into our pipeline, we started having external international development partners who wanted to not only go through our training, but also wanted our advice or support in capacity building. And this especially set the table for COVID-19. We've been doing all this supportive COPs. All of a sudden, everybody wanted to have help with facilitation. Everybody wanted to start COPs or clusters of COPs, including outside partners. And at this point, I'm going to hand over to Davida, who can talk about our way forward.
Thank you, Bruce. And here is a quick slide on results. I'm sorry, I switched off my camera. I don't want to be in trouble with the connection. I want to be sure you can hear me. So talking about results, today we talk about lessons learned. So I'll go through the results thinking about the question, what is it that we can learn from these results? And I have two concepts I want to highlight. The first one being demand. Listening and responding to the demand is paramount. In fact, we had demand from trained community managers, which is the reason why we created the certification program that reaches over, right now it's about 100 people every year, providing a steady pipeline of trained community managers. But there is also demand beyond the WorldBank Group, which is why we certify community managers, not only inside, but also outside of the WorldBank Group. And during the past 2 years, especially in the past few months in particular, we have seen some strong demand for capacity building services from external organizations focused on building systems to support cluster of communities. And we continue to scale up to meet this internal and external demand. And the other word, which I think is important, is recognition. Recognition is quite important as it's functional to generating evidence of results and awareness of the importance of the communities of practice. So you have teams and individuals who submit for our stories of the impact competition, and they do get individual and team recognition, but they also provide fascinating use and impact cases for the support of COPs. So recognition is 2 times strategic. So where do we go from here? Where do we go next? To put things in perspective, we could say that in the past 8 years, we managed to successfully support the creation of communities at individual and team level. So we supported community managers and their teams. What we started doing, and we want to be the focus of the next phase of the team of Communities Reinvented, is working with departments, which we believe is what will enable us to scale up the impact of communities of practice by creating an ecosystem, an enabling environment for a healthy ecosystem of communities. So in more details, the challenge or opportunity, if you want, that we have identified is the fact that communities are not directly tied to the core business. In most departments, the structures, the incentives, the mechanisms to promote knowledge through communities are simply insufficient. And as a result, communities very often are pockets of excellence whose impact is not clearly documented or even understood, and sometimes it's even hindered. So you would see communities working very efficiently, but in a silo without a clear mandate. So we asked ourselves, how might we define the success of communities in terms of impact? How might we help departments better understand the potential impact of the communities and decide to invest in this potential? So if I may use a metaphor, we don't want them to buy a car because it's pretty. We want them to buy a car because of where the car can take them and will take them. So the answer we gave ourselves is what we need is an impact framework. We have a couple of successful models in the bank, and we will try to replicate them and expand them. And I hope that through engaging with this community, we can get some good ideas on what an impact framework for communities of practice looks like. But also because we realize that our reach has been so far limited to internal audience, where there is a lot of external and growing demand, we also decided to start offering our services externally, and we have a couple of ongoing projects. For example, there is an interesting one, collaboration with the Joint Learning Network, which is a global partnership in the health sector to connect ministers of finance and ministers of health in about 100 countries on COVID-specific policy dialogues and knowledge exchange. So this is something important, and we decided that we have good material, good training, and we want to open up. So in a nutshell, this is what we are preparing to deliver in the next 12 months. We call it a knowledge flow accelerator, and it comprises of an impact framework and the community incubator as a modular learning journey for community managers and their teams. And we want this to be open and accessible everywhere by anyone, including external organizations and partners. So wrapping up the lessons learned so far, I won't read the slide. There is no time. We will share this presentation in the chat in a moment. But if you ask me of one piece of advice which results from this incredible journey of 8 years, I think that would be that if you want to create and sustain a vibrant ecosystem of communities of practice in your organization, you need to be aware that you don't create a center of excellence, you really become one by listening to needs, by professionalizing community managers, by setting clear expectations in terms of both results and commitment, etc. I'll stop here. Thank you very much for listening to our story. Do get in touch if you want to talk more, explore partnership opportunities. You'll find our contacts in the presentation, which I'll share in a moment. Ginetta, over to you.
Thank you, Davide. We are now having 5 minutes time to answer quickly some questions placed in the chat. If we don't have enough time, I will compile the remaining questions and pass them to Davide, Bruce, and Ray, who kindly offered to respond in writing. So the question number 1 we received is from Sirvidya Rish. How did you contact external people? Were they your partners? Were they your partners, I mean?
Usually they reach out to us when we start announcing our next community management training cohort. And then others have reached out to us spontaneously during the period of COVID. In particular, they realized everything shifted online. So having a structure, COP support structure for starting clusters of COPs. And sometimes it's just referrals from others. We have a number of the people we've trained who've gone on to work for UN and or other organizations. And so they're on our networks. We tell them when training, et cetera, is coming up, and they send people our way.
Good. Second question from Sarah Gomez. To what extent have you employed academic theory and analysis as the basis of your communities, or has your approach been more practice-based, based on the World Bank specific practice? And question number 2, have you employed km4dev experience with COPs in any way?
So this is Ray. I'll take the theoretical background. So we certainly build on the theories of Etienne Wenger, and I'm sure anyone who's involved in communities of practice will have read his several works on facilitating communities of practice. So we definitely build on his 3-pillar approach of domain, community, and practice, or kind of the 4 questions: what and why, who is going to be involved, and how. So that's certainly one of the foundation blocks of our communities of practice. We've also employed other consultants like Richard Millington of Fever Bee, who wrote a great book called Buzzing Communities. Generally, those are the theoretical underpinnings of our communities of practice.
Yeah, this is Bruce. We also, when we had COP Strengthening, we had Katrina Pugh. She brought her 8 design principles, which again was built on a wide range of the theoretical background documents. I brought 10 years of experience from working with the American Red Cross, and I'd been through quite a number of different COP and knowledge management trainings. Davida, do you want to talk about the KM4Dev, what you brought to the table?
I think, yeah, there was that question on whether we engage with the World Bank or not. I've been in the World Bank for a year only. I think the World Bank, we have some members in the World Bank that are members of KM4Dev, but there isn't a strong linkage. So definitely what I'm trying to bring into the value I am trying to add is to strengthen this connection. Hence, the sense of this session is really to have this as a sort of introduction, and I hope it leads to some interesting partnerships.
Okay, I think we have time for another more question. And again, I will compile the remaining question and pass them to David, Bruce, and Ray, who kindly offer to respond in writing. The last question is from Raymond Obare. What are the criteria for joining as an external participant?
There's usually two criteria as far as for our COP certification training. We have a application or that you fill out. Normally we're looking either can this individual potentially contribute or be a community manager or leader or help teams at the World Bank build their own successful COPs. And then the other one is, are you from an international development partner of the World Bank? So our focus is eliminating extreme poverty and building shared prosperity. So a number of you who work with KM4Dev may fall into that bucket. We're not interested in, for example, training people from corporations who have no connection to international development.
Very good. Ray, you are with the microphone off.
That's okay. I was speaking to somebody else in the
Okay,
room.
sorry. So, okay, now it's time for the breakout rooms. Thank you very much, everyone. And Cesar, you can proceed in splitting the participants in the 3 breakout rooms. Enjoy it, and let's see what's the result.
Okay, 55 people sign up to breakout rooms. The rest will be randomly assigned. If you are submitting right now, I'm sorry, you will be also randomly assigned.
Mm-hmm.
For those who are still in the main room, you have a message on your screen popping up in the center, inviting you to join the breakout room. Please click there and you will be taken there automatically. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is the main room. And Ginetta or Ray, you have the floor.
Yes. Okay. We are all back, so thank you very much for your time. We hope that you find interesting the conversation you had in the breakout rooms. Now it's time to debrief and to share your ideas, your outcome, the highlights from each room. So Ray, you are the first, so the stage is all yours.
Okay, thank you. So a lot of interesting contributions in my session, which was primarily for facilitators who either had received support or who had not received support and the lessons they learned. And it's interesting from the people who did not receive support that it was pretty much a lot of scramble and self-help. A lot of self-help, either in reading and theories, some courses taken. Everybody really was grateful to KM4Dev. They felt that they provided a lot of support for not just for communities of practice, but knowledge management and knowledge sharing and knowledge exchange in general. So kudos to KM4Dev for providing that support and ongoing contributions. The people that did receive support, there was definitely a some formal structure. Obviously, UNICEF is very much well developed, and we as a group in the World Bank have worked closely with UNICEF, and Ivan Butina's name came up a few times, who was instrumental in really creating the group as we are now at the World Bank, and who now works at UNICEF. So if you are at UNICEF, definitely, or other colleagues at UNICEF, definitely reach out to Ivan. He's a great person, very knowledgeable and very enthusiastic. So be prepared for a long session if you reach out to him, but very, very worthwhile. I also think another thing came out was the importance of being a community of community managers. Jorge at the end related a story about working with people who were experimenting and who are their practitioners. And I mentioned at the bank, we have a community of community managers. So it's a true community of practice, a group of people who are trying to get better at what they do and improve the results they're trying to achieve by collaborating with each other over a period of time. And that's kind of a standard definition of community practice, but very often as community managers, we don't practice what we preach. And certainly...
Can you shut the door? Sorry.
That's okay. I have one of those children myself. And to reach out and to attend things like this and really reach out to other community managers and learn from their practice and their implementations. So that's what I have, unless anyone else in my group would like to add anything. Okay, back to you, Ginetta.
Thank you, Ray. Bruce, what's the outcome from your room? Bruce, your microphone is off.
Thank you. Our question was really from a perspective of members of communities of practice. What have you found the most valuable from what we shared? And also what's missing to make communities of practice valuable to their members? So we had very good feedback. One point was they need to be focused. If they're too broad, sometimes they'll splinter or they won't attract members because people aren't sure what's in it for them. The second is they need to have the right purpose. So in the chartering, what's it all about? And is it for members or is it just for the organization? Third is you have to map knowledge flow, the two-way knowledge flow. How is it going to and from around the community? How is it affecting the rest of your organization or partners? And if you have a network of communities like us, how does it flow throughout all the pipelines of the World Bank communities? The next is somebody like integration with business, that should be a specific focus of how you're organizing and designing and implementing your COPs. The next was the importance of professional facilitation to pull the knowledge and get people to share, to build relationships. That one I like very much. The next was impact stories. And that's a way you can get your more senior leadership to buy into the value of the COP. And that's a big challenge, getting buy-in. So the impact stories definitely work for us, and having more senior leaders review them, again, helps to educate them, because most times they're not thinking about what a COP does. They're working on higher level development challenges. The next was quality facilitators. Again, the importance of being able to make something out of what people are sharing and encourage people to share more, and thanking and recognizing them for their contributions. The next was suggestion. He wanted to connect with people who shared his interest in design theory of change. How do you get the local perspective in a country or a subnational country? How do you get that wired into your COP so they're actually working towards and with the local people, rather than just saying, well, we're the experts from whatever and we're here to help? How do you make it so it's more collaborative with the local community and focused on their needs and the local members' needs? The last was somebody saying, you know, the fact that the World Bank has external facing communities of practice. We try to be neutral conveners of these 115 different COPs. There's lots of partners involved, but we have, it's an opportunity for us to really encourage that two-way knowledge exchange between members who are World Bank and members who are not, and how we connect things. I'm going to call on Monica. Is there anything you want to add, Monica, that you got out of this session?
I think we covered a lot, really. I think we covered the main areas, which were purpose, which was having that community manager and facilitator role. I think we spoke about the flow of knowledge and how important it is to create that network and an ecosystem, and not to create silos. Because what we don't want is to have 100 silos in an organisation. I work at Lloyds Bank and went and created, set up and introduced communities of practice there. And what I've done is basically connect them. So we have built strategic communities and a strategic network so that people know which one follows on from the other. So you are with your right hand taking them, with your left hand giving, or the other way around. You become part of a chain as well. And then you start to, in your events, invite others. Who you feel will benefit and participate, and they will then share your knowledge with others. And so you start to parachute people into different communities, but only when you kind of have that connection. So I think we started to speak about that, and we would have gone on to that had we had a bit more time, I feel. But yes, thank you.
Thank you, Monica. And that's important in breakout sessions like this. We get a chance to start, and we hope to replicate that with others. Over to Davide, or Ginetta, you can introduce him.
That's okay. Davide, it's your turn.
Thank you. So my group, we looked at the topic of communities of practice from the perspective of an organization, an entity that wants to nurture the ecosystem. So exactly like Communities Reinvented is trying to do. So we call them the sponsors. We got a couple of good ideas shared by the people in the room. Basically, to summarize the main points that were made is that one important thing to do is to sometimes there is a disconnection between the top management that is very supportive and the members of the community. We didn't mention in the presentation that there is middle management, and that's where the decision is made to allocate resources, so the time of the people to work in the communities. So one suggestion was to try to work closer with the middle management instead of only looking at the two extremes. There was a strong suggestions on repeated suggestions on the importance of impact. So if you're not sure, if you do not know how to demonstrate the impact, then it's difficult to get traction. And we have one member, John from the US, he mentioned that he have a model about communities of purpose, and I'll call on him to talk about it in a moment. Then we had another suggestion from Srividya, I think, who spoke about the importance of having the time that people work in communities of practice reflected in their job description. Otherwise, it's just work on top of what you're really doing, and you need to think about the trade-off between doing your job and exchanging knowledge, which helps you with the job, but it's not immediate. So obviously, it puts you in a difficult situation. And then there was an interesting idea, which I will ask Andreas to tell us more about using AI to connect COPs. But let's give a minute to John to talk about the 6 communities of purpose.
Thank you, David. My name is John Antill. I'm with U.S. Army Cyber Joint Force Headquarters Command. We run and assist with a community of purpose called s6.army.mil. And our framework is fairly simple. Our leaders in that organization they have performance metrics that they have to meet. And the people that come to it are people looking for help. So it's an inspectable item, and that's what and a performance-based item. And that's actually helped grow this community now to where we're answering one question every minute. If anybody has any questions.
Thank you, John. A couple of seconds, but really 30 seconds for Andreas. Would you like to tell us a little bit about these AI solutions?
Well, I don't have the solution yet, but the topic is that, or the challenge is that we have a lot of communities of practice and even multi-stakeholder partnerships, knowledge partnerships, which are working on similar topics. And the question is, how can we connect these networks without merging them, which is not always possible. And the idea is to develop a knowledge graph, a semantic web, where we can search, identify people, connect with other communities and people in the communities that are working on comparable topics. Somehow this is now under development in the climate sector, but this is of course feasible for internal communities as well.
Thank you, Andreas. And I'll stop there because we have a couple of minutes to wrap up. Back to Ginetta.
Thank you very much, Davide, Ray, and Bruce, and all the participants. I think it's time to leave our session, but before this, let me share with you our relay message to the next session. Cesar, can you upload that slide, please, so we can read all together?
The slide in the Google, if it's the slide in the Google Doc, then it's Davide who should show it.
If you want, I can share it.
Or you, yeah.
Go ahead. In the meantime, I just wanted to say thank you very much. We learned a lot from you. We hope this was useful, but we also learned a lot. And what we want to do is to continue the conversation. So I can see in the chat there are lots and lots of questions. We will write the answers and start the thread on km4dev, and then we can continue the conversation there. That's it. So we can stay in touch. Thank you all.
Okay. So thank you, Davide. Thank you all. So this is our relay message. When people come together to share knowledge and collaborate, they can solve the most complex challenges. By building a vibrant ecosystem of communities of practice, an organization can foster learning, collaboration, and innovation to drive real development impact on. I will take care of it, of course, and share with the next session. In the few minutes I have, I want to thank you, Ray, Davide, Bruce, for this wonderful meeting and session, and Cesar for the technical assistance, but especially of you who made this session so productive and so positive. So we hope you enjoy it, and of course, keep in touch and have a good rest of the day. Thank you very much.